Hey everyone, I'm Rob Vai, and today I'll be sharing what I've learned coaching female footy players. Last episode was episode 1. We spoke about why the skill development in the female space is completely different to the males. Today, in episode 2, I'll be sharing with you what I've learned about how female footy players learn. Disclaimer, this is all based off of my experience, the many years I've spent in the female space, and I'm going to share it. It doesn't apply to everyone, so let's get into it. So today, we're going to be talking about the learning process. It's something I've studied over many years. I've read many books around teaching and coaching, attended many different sessions of other coaches, and I've also worked across many different settings, both boys and girls. There's 3 layers to how every sport is coached and what players need to learn. First is the technical, then is the tactical, and then the strategic understanding. So technical are your fundamental skills. Your tactical is when to apply them, decision making, the when, where, how, why. The last is your strategic, the longer game plan. Now I find with females, they're very heavily still learning the technical and the tactical. With strategic, a lot still lack the understanding about things like attacking sets, what yardage is and what good ball is, and the difference between different types of sets and when and why you do certain things in a set, creating advantages, breaking teams down, all those things that are quite complex. So here are the things that I've found about coaching girls and how they learn rugby league. Okay, number 1, with females, I've found at training sessions between boys and girls, they talk more than boys. One of the things I do is I create space for questioning. Now, in my experience, female players highly benefit from having time to ask questions. They're more likely to have questions than the males, but they are more likely also to ask the question if they're confused, rather than just carrying on and think that they can get it through repetition. I found that teenage players might often pause drills, or they'll stop during the drill and they want to know, am I doing this right? Is this how you do it? Am I doing it the wrong way? I sometimes have gotten the impression that they feel a little bit embarrassed. They don't want to get things wrong, to feel ashamed in front of their friends, let the others down. Now, I've seen that by giving them the opportunity to clarify and ask, their confidence just goes up, because boys are more likely to take risks than the girls at training and in games. So we need to encourage the females to just have confidence in what they're learning and just apply it and just make mistakes. Okay, now number 2, giving the players a checklist. When I go into a drill, a checklist would be, okay, if we're doing practicing our foot into contact, I'll say, number 1, did you get your foot in the lane? And number 2, did you dip under the ball? So I'm not giving them 10 things. I'm not telling them 2 things and then saying, oh, but you didn't do this, this, this. I'm focusing on the 2 things. Now, males and females are different, because the males will do it 100 times and won't really ask questions about it. But the females, they will just question whether they're doing it right or wrong, and they're looking at you for clarification. What you don't want, and what I've found, players turning to you every second to know whether they've done it right or wrong. You being the one holding the tick or the cross. I give them their checklist and they can say it themselves or to each other whether they've done it right or wrong. Females are good at that because they're reflective and they're honest. So I've learned that over time, if things go wrong, I can't just rush in with a correction. Say, oh yeah, you need to do this. Yeah, you need to do that. You have to mix it up. Otherwise, again, they'll rely on your voice every single time. So sometimes I'll walk past and I'll say, what did you do wrong? And then they'll tell me. And if they don't tell me what they did wrong, they probably don't understand what I was explaining at the start, so it falls back on me. But if I get them saying, yeah, I wasn't low enough, I wasn't close enough, my timing was wrong, my spacing was wrong, they're processing, they're learning in real time. So that's why I think checklists are a really good go-to. Okay, number 3, the power of peers. So your peers are your teammates. Females, they really thrive to giving and receiving feedback to each other. And this is called peer learning. Now I've found it reinforces accountability, and because they don't want to let each other down and they want to uplift each other. So peer coaching would look like, instead of me telling you whether you've done it right or wrong, you know the checklist. Make sure you tell your partner whether they dipped low enough or they put their foot in the lane. You're responsible for telling them, and I've found a lot of the time this has been some of the most successful teachings, and the girl giving the feedback is learning at the same time. They're becoming the coach themselves. Now with younger players like teenagers and younger, I find teenagers are quite different. They're often less comfortable with peer feedback and peer teaching, but if there's a strong culture already in place, then this could be a go-to. And number 4 would be letting them reflect. So a lot of female players will say to me, oh, I overthink things sometimes, or I think too much about it, or it gets in my head. The thing is, a lot of the female players have a strength of being deep thinkers and can reflect really well. I found that after sessions, I would encourage players to write things down, put it in their notes, and getting themselves a diary. And I tell them to bring it next session, or the following session, I'll say, all right, what did we learn last time? I find promoting and encouraging reflection would lead to them coming back to training, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, hey, you know when you said about this in defense, or this with tackling, or with passing, or decision making, what would happen if this situation to occur, or what if this happens instead? And these types of what if questions are forms of deep thinking, and it shows that they're thinking beyond the drills. And I find this happens a lot more, and I find that they're not afraid to ask these questions or approach me about these things compared to the boys. Okay, number 5, avoid assumptions, start small. When I first started coaching females, I was on crutches after a knee injury in a New South Wales Cup trial. I couldn't physically demonstrate what a 2v1 looked like and what draw and pass actually meant. Passing backwards was a new skill for a lot of them. So drawing and passing, they didn't even understand. Now, if you're a male watching this and you grew up playing rugby league, you probably don't remember the first time you passed the ball backwards or were taught to pass the ball backwards, because it would have happened years ago. But I've coached that many girls to understand how to pass backwards and how to explore space and draw and pass. From starters and even at high level players, I'll still tip them up, and I'll have such a critical eye over what they're doing, and that's helped me over time to see there's so many factors that the boys haven't told me about how skill is executed. This was a turning point for me. I never assume anyone knows anything anymore, and I found that this helps because we can get an understanding just by asking the question, hey, do you know what a tram line is, or do you know what that is? And they're quick to answer yes or no, and they're honest. You can't assume what they know. Saying to them, play eyes up footy, get to the tram lines. Some players don't know tram lines. Playing on the keep go. Building momentum, building pressure. What does that actually look like? Going against the grain, going on the keep go, jamming, being passive in defense, shutting the gate. All these things, there's such confusing terms if you've never heard them before. So that told me I can't assume anything with any player. Always ask first. We're going to talk about number 7, honest feedback, not empty praise. So being honest doesn't mean you have to be negative. A lot of players I've coached, they say to me, oh, Rob, you know, I like that you're honest. I want an honest coach. And they say, oh, I want to be told the truth. Now, there's a difference between telling them the truth and being disrespectful and arrogant. And I've found that a lot of females, they respond to being told something honestly, but also being guided through the whole process. So if I turned around and said, oh, you're running that line wrong, you got to fix it, and then I walked away, then they're not going to trust me, because they're just going to sit there and overthink, oh, how do I do it? What do I do? From start to finish, if you pick someone up on something, you have to be there helping them until they get it. And once they get it, then you do this. All right, moving on. But you just can't ignore the fact that you need to be honest with them just because they say, you know, be positive. Avoid overpraising them. Just correct them. And when they get things right, tell them. And they get better at things, tell them. They fix something, tell them. That's the praise, when they improve on something. Not, oh, you're really fast, or you did that really well. Good job, good job, good job. So I found being honest with the females has helped in that sense. All right, now last thing I'm going to speak about with females and learning is avoiding excessive consequences when they're trying to learn. Now, what does that look like? Okay, well, if they drop the ball when they're trying to learn how to hit a hole, or if they drop the ball when they're trying to run certain shape, don't penalize them. Like, they're going to drop the ball, or they're going to get things wrong, or they're going to miss a tackle. But if you stick to your checklist and make sure that that checklist is the only thing that they're getting wrong and getting it right, and getting it wrong and getting it right, then that's fine, because that's the learning process. I think with the females, it's a very fine line when giving consequences. If you want to uphold standards for certain things like being late and all things like that, that's on the coach's discretion. But what I'm saying is interrupting the learning cycle, because they're getting anxious to catch a ball and anxious to do certain things because they're still learning it. Well, I think from my experience, I've pulled back heavily on any form of consequence or penalties that just aren't productive. So what I've learned about this whole learning cycle with females is that coaching by listening and building trust has been so much more effective and taught me a lot more in the female space than in the males. The end goal for boys and girls is always going to be the same. Getting the outcomes is what we want. How we get there is going to be different for the females, and getting them there quicker is what I've hopefully been able to share with you. So I want you to drop a comment below and let me know what's something that you've done that's really helped with the learning process for the females. I'm looking forward to catching you on episode 3. Take care.